You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body.
And verse 29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for the building others up according to their needs, that they may benefit to those who listen."
Yeah, so that's Ephesians 4:22-25. And like you said, you read verse 29. So we wanted to start out with that because this episode is episode 5 in our series on what is real friendship and what's some of the stuff we've talked about thus far, Lucas, in previous episodes.
Ooh.
It's been a couple weeks since we've recorded.
Consistency.
Yes, being consistently present.
Careful.
Being careful for the good of those other people. And then today we're talking about being candid in conversation.
So what is that like? What is it like to be candid?
Yeah, and I think that's an important question, right? The verse we were just reading, Paul's writing to the church in Ephesus, and I think this intrigued me as I was getting ready to do this podcast episode. You know, verse 22, 23, 24, Paul says, "Take off the old self, put on the new self that's created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." And the very next thing he says after putting on the new self is, "Therefore, put off falsehood and speak truthfully to one another." So in Paul's mind, the first place his mind goes after he says, "Be righteous, be holy," has to do with how you talk with one another. It says, don't be false with one another, speak truthfully to one another. And I think that's the essence of what we mean by being candid. We'll talk in our next episode about the idea of how you're going to counsel each other with the truth. But in this episode, we're really focusing more on the idea of being candid with one another, which is about speaking truthfully to someone else. I know, have you ever had a friend or coworker or someone who does not necessarily speak truthfully?
Oh yeah. I think we all like being comfortable, and sometimes the truth is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think most of the time it's uncomfortable too. You can speak truth. I mean, it's so easy for us to say the truth on the easy stuff, right?
Sure.
But what we're talking about is like this truth of like speaking in someone's life that benefits them, and usually that thing is hard.
Yeah.
So because we all have blind spots, as we talked about before in our previous episodes, right? And sometimes to call that thing out, sometimes we like to go around it. Sometimes we like to talk about it with other people, or sometimes we just consume it, and it changes the perspective of this other person that we're mad about something, but we're truly mad about this one thing that gets bigger than it needs to be instead of dealing with it right. So that the truth, like, okay, what's that thing, and speaking that thing that could benefit someone else, that can build someone else. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's where Paul goes in that Ephesians passage, as he talks about in verse 29, the speaking only what is beneficial for the good of, or for the building up of other people. I think, right, because typically, if you have someone who lies to you frequently, you're probably not going to have a close relationship with them, because a real friendship is built on trust. And if someone's lying all the time, you're not going to have a lot of trust towards them. You might have to be in a relationship with them if they're a family member or coworker or something. But I think what the bigger issue is, and this is, I think, what you're pointing at, is that oftentimes we can be untruthful by omitting things and just conveniently not saying things, or saying things in a way that don't necessarily express the whole story. You know, we can kind of beat around the bush, or you talk about something, kind of try to drop hints to someone, rather than actually saying, here's what I really think, or here's how I really feel about this thing.
You know, one thing about the guys in my life, right when we were kind of each of us were going deep in our relationships. We were getting more comfortable with the other guys around us, right? And I was someone, for me, I like to hide,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes when you hide, actually, when you hide, you're not being honest.
What
And
is say more about that? What does hiding look like?
hiding
It's
is
not,
like
I'm assuming it's not that you're literally going and like hiding behind the
no.
couch when something comes up.
Hiding is not revealing the thing that I need to reveal to those who love me, and revealing the thing that is, whether it's sin, whether it's hurt, sin is hurt, whether it's something I did that I wasn't proud of, So like hiding those things, saying I'm gonna keep this to myself, and we've all committed to bring things to light, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna hide this. So every time I come around the table, I'll say something, but I'll kind of work around.
Yeah, so let's give an example of that. It doesn't have to necessarily be an actual example of something that it could be, but what would be an example of how the difference between doing that in a way that's hiding, omitting something versus being fully candid?
Okay, this is good. This one's good. As guys, we've all kind of struggled with lust, purity, pornography. All of us did, and I think that was the thing that, like, weekly confession when we started, and like bringing that thing to light. And I had this thought, I had this lust. I was at the gym, I looked at this girl a certain way, and like saying it that way, saying what actually happened, what you actually watched, where did you do it at, like being that specific, like. I mean, when we drilled down on those things, that's when we were dealing with things. But like, hey guys,
that's uncomfortable.
Here's how most of us, did it in the beginning. It's like, hey guys, I stumbled this week.
Right. I struggled with purity.
I struggled with purity, and I saw this, and it's tough, and we move on. Like, no, we're not doing that here. So what actually happened? What did you do? What did you see? Where did you watch it? And okay, let's bring this to the Lord. Let's churn from this thing, right? So, but like that is,
and I think that's the difference between being candid or speaking truthfully. You're saying, I'm going to tell you the full story, and I'm not going to conveniently leave out some of the details. And I think we all know, like, everyone's been in scenarios where you've had option A, I can tell them what I really think, or option B, I can take the easier path and tell them skim over the surface so that they kind of get the idea, but they conveniently don't know the full story.
When we are not saying the thing and we keep working around it, you won't grow.
Yes. And I think the challenge here too is, like Jesus says in, I think I jotted it down here. What is it? It's Luke 6:45. Jesus says basically that the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. So if you are conveniently letting falsehood or like omitting truth when you're talking to someone, that's a reflection on what's actually going on in your heart. So if you're lying to people, whether that's by outright lying or by lying by omission, and not telling the full truth in a scenario, that needs to be a wake-up call for us, for each of you watching. Oh, that means there's lying and untruthfulness in my heart, and that's a problem.
It's, as much as we're saying this to you, I'm also saying this to myself too. So we talked about how we need to be truthful, how we need to just say the thing instead of working around it and say it fully. Like, that's one of the ways you can be real with your friends and be candor with your friends. Now, how do you speak into someone else's life when you see that blind spot? How do you, should you work around the thing? Should you pray about it and let time go by? When should you bring it up, And how do you do it well, because sometimes, like, again, there's a beauty of also let that being messy, You know, there's a beauty in that. And well, the thing is, you understand, okay, next time if I have to have a hard conversation, I need to do it this way, right? So, because all of us are different, all of us receive information differently. Some of us, you need to spend way more time with us before we let you speak into our. Some of us is like, dude, I just need truth in my life. Like, am I doing something? Like, I'm the one that's like, I want that. I want people to call those things out. But there's only certain people I listen to people that have spent the most time with me, that have been in my life consistently. I'm not going to listen to, people are going to say stuff about you no matter what, right? And some of them, actually, a stranger might be completely right. You know, you probably are doing something, but I feel like the Holy Spirit's going to use that to say, okay, hey, he's not wrong for saying that. So how do you do it well when you speak into someone else's life with truth?
Yeah. I think maybe before directly answering that, I think it's helpful to just point out that what we're talking about here is what it means to be a real friend with someone. And we're trying to use that phrase in this series and elsewhere in the podcast to help distinguish between, you're going to have a lot of acquaintances in your life. You're going to have friends who are, people you have fun with and you enjoy. But we're trying to point towards, I think, is the biblical idea of someone who's truly, another term that you might use is like a brother or sister, someone who's a companion, who's committed to you. So these five C's that we talk about, candid in conversation, you're going to counsel with the truth, committed to give grace is another one we'll talk about in the future. Those things are kind of diagnostics to evaluate, hey, am I being a real friend to that person? Are they being a real friend to me? So the level to which you're able to be candid in a conversation can tell you a little bit about the level of friendship you have with that person. Because probably the way that candor is going to look with someone who you have, like you're saying, a really deep level of trust, you've known each other for a while, that's going to function a little bit differently than someone you're just getting to know. And it should. That's healthy. Going back to your specific question, how do you do that well? I think so much of that is going to be contextual. What's the topic? What's the context that you're having a conversation in? But I think a fundamental question we need to ask ourselves is, what's motivating the choice I'm making as I'm having that conversation? Like that Ephesians passage says, the goal is speak what is useful for the good of the other person and the building them up. Now, when let's say you're talking with a friend about, I'll pick the topic of money. Say you're having a conversation with someone about money, and maybe they're struggling with debt and they're talking about it. Now you have that conversation, if they bring up, oh man, I've got a bunch of credit card debt. You have kind of a couple options in that moment. Do you ask the harder question and say, okay, so like, why do you think that, whatever, there's a bunch of questions you could ask there depending on exactly how that conversation goes. But are you going to ask questions that are going to draw them out or invite them to get into the details and speak the full truth? Or are you going to kind of skate over the top and say, oh, that's a bummer, man. Yeah, that's hard. And kind of move on to the next thing. And either one of those might be the right option, depending on, I think, what your motive is and how the Holy Spirit is moving you. If your motive for choosing either of those is fear or worry, then that's probably the wrong choice. If your motive is for choosing either of those is love and care, and I want the good for this person, that one's probably the right choice. Depending on who you are, your personality, what God's doing in the moment, the conversation you're having, either of those choices could be wrong or right. Right? Like I could fearfully choose to have the harder conversation with that person, motivated by the fear of like, oh, I have to do this the right way. I have to solve all their problems. Or I can also equally fearfully choose to just ignore that opportunity for a deeper conversation. So a lot of it, I think, comes back to that question of motive. Is my motive love for that person, or the way our Ephesians passage says, am I saying something that is for their good and their building up?
Yeah, I have a quick story time here. I had a friend that did this really well in my life. 2 years ago, I was in a car with my friend, and we were both driving. and we were just having, I don't know what we were talking about, but the way he brought this up and what happened after, I just thought of this as we were kind of talking about that. It was just beautiful. So we're on a car ride, and he's driving, he turns to me, he's like, hey man, you're not confident in your smile. Why is that? This is before I didn't even have braces at this time. Like, this is something that I was thinking about. Wow. I had more opportunities to be, meet a lot of people, speak a lot more and stuff like that. And it just wasn't, it was
something you were conscious of.
It was there. It's like, hey man, you're not confident in your smile. Why is that? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, no, I think you do know. Why is that? It's like, I don't know. I want to get braces and I haven't got it. It's expensive. It's like, I'll help you. Let's get braces. I'll help you.
Yeah.
A month after that, I got braces.
Wow.
So it's like, and he was the first one to say, all right, send me a picture after you're done with your appointment. We did all this process. I just didn't want to get my wisdom teeth pulled. I didn't want to do all this stuff. And
dental stuff is no fun.
Yeah. And I just didn't want to go through all that. But like, it's been affecting me. He noticed it. And he had the guts as we were driving to say, hey man, I've seen this and I'm noticing this. Why is that? And can I help you with it?
Yeah. And I think the key thing in that story was, like you said, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the choice for him in that moment is, okay, do I let that slide? I brought it up and he didn't respond right away. So let's just move on. But he chose the next step, the maybe a slightly more challenging path, and say, well, I think you do know.
Yeah. And it's just now, I have these braces on right now, and I'm just like thinking about, it's like, wow, like if it wasn't for that conversation, I don't know what it would look like after, but like it was that, like literally not that shortly after that I had braces on, but, and it wasn't like the issue was I just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it's like whether it's finances, whether it's just like pain, stuff like that. It's like we can all do something about the thing that is challenging, right? There's some way to do it. And it's a beautiful thing when the community comes around you and says, hey, we're going to do this thing. And this time we're going to step out together instead of by yourself. Right? Yeah. So I did the thing because I had a fan on the side and it's someone that was cheering me on to say, hey, we're going to get this stuff done. Right. And I update him consistently. I know it's something so small. It's braces. Right. So it's like, wow, that would have never happened if it wasn't for that car ride or if it wasn't for that conversation, if it wasn't for a friend that loved me to say, all right, God's using you, man. And there's something about the smile that you gotta, it's like, you just smile. It's like you're hiding, you're closing your mouth. Like, stop doing that. You know? So
yeah, that's a great example of, the impact and beauty that comes in a relationship when you are willing and able mutually. It's not just a one-way thing. If you're friends with someone, there needs to be both parties saying, I am committed to being candid and telling the truth, asking the questions that need to be asked when we're in conversation with each other.
Now there's one more story. Another friend. This is before him and his current his wife. This is him before him and his wife got married. And they were going to move in together before they got married. Right. And none of the guys in the group kind of challenged him right away. Right. And this is right away when we were kind of getting into this group and he didn't know how to push. He didn't like, hey guys, we've messed up a lot too, So it's like, we didn't know how to challenge that yet. Right. And one of our other friends that, lives in the DC area, he also tells him that too. And he was like, why are you doing that? Right? Really just like challenge him right away. And then our friend comes back to the group and says, how come none of you asked me why, like, this is a bad idea. Why did none of you ask me to not do this thing? It's like, wow, like that's when I knew in that moment, it's like, man, this is more than just like being here every Monday, sitting here. It's like, no, we really want to pursue Jesus, and we want to do it in a way that we're going to spur each other on, hold each other accountable, pray for each other. But we're also going to, the accountability part is not running away from the hard things.
Yeah. And that's not just that's a nice beneficial add-on. It's looking back at the Ephesians passage. It says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood, speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body.
Yeah.
So the logic is, right, you need to speak truthfully, honestly, directly with one another because you're all connected to each other as a body. And just like if my leg is wounded in some way or messed up in some way, that's going to affect the way I walk, which is going to affect my back, which is going to affect my neck, which is going to affect, it's if we're connected with the people around us, which God has designed us to be that way, then it's imperative that we, like Paul says, we must. It's not like it would be nice if you did. It's you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to one another.
Yeah. Why do you think that's hard to do that? Why do you think that's just like, I would say for us, we've been pursuing the Lord together. We've been serving him. And I'm not saying we've done it perfectly here, but it's still hard to say the hard thing. Why is that? And I know that I'm not holding too tight. I understand, like I've given it to the Lord. Like I know that, but why is it still hard?
Yeah. I think it's our inherent, I don't know if these are two sides of the same coin, our inherent selfishness, and which then results in like fear and shame. So fear in the sense of like selfishness being like I'm focused on myself. How am I doing? Am I safe? Am I secure? Which are not bad things to want. But when you're so focused on yourself, then what you're thinking about is not necessarily what is going to be good for the other person. You're thinking about how is this going to affect me. So it's I think, at least for me, all the times where I've struggled to have a hard conversation with someone or be candid or truthful, whether that's truthful about somewhere I messed up or truthful about, hey, this is something that you did that was hurtful. Usually the thing that's holding me back is not the thought of, oh, this is going to hurt them. Maybe that's just a personality thing. It's usually more like, ooh, how is this going to impact our relationship? Specifically, how is this going to negatively impact me? And maybe some people are different, motive-wise. I think my wife would maybe be a little bit more like, I don't want to say that because that might make them feel upset. But is that really about them being upset, or is it more about you feeling bad because that other person is upset because something that you said?
Yeah. I look at it, two way, right? So like you see in the book of wisdom, Proverbs, how it talks about it. A wounds of a friend, it's like, sometimes when you say that truth, when you say it out loud and when you say it to them, it could hurt them, right? But it's beautiful, right? It kind of builds them up because sometimes we don't receive things well, right? But there's this other side of like, well, the enemy multiplies kisses, right? So it's like there's like if you withhold the truth, you're no different than the enemy.
Yeah, that's important.
It's like if we are saying, hey, I'm committed to this thing. I want to pursue the Lord with you here, and I'm going to be a real friend. And that's the thing we've said multiple times before. The real friend, like if you guys don't, it's not looking for problems, it's not looking for things, but if there's always sunshine and rainbows, then are you truly real friends? Because I struggle with certain things, and things come up, or I'm less patient here, or I say this thing, or I don't say it well, and I do that over time consistently, then I'm not reflecting Christ well, right? So I need people around me to say, hey, what are you doing here? Yeah. What's that? Hey, let's talk about this. Hey, I'm going to challenge you in this.
To you.
Yeah, and that's not easy, right? Yeah. So, but I think most, as I would just say for the Midwest, most of us, we're all super kind people around the state, right? And I think people do mean well, but I think we're confusing what meaning well really looks like. It's as we read Ephesians, it's like, hey, are you building people up? And
truth.
And it's not saying you're bringing. There's sometimes I have to hold my mouth and I have to hold my tongue and not say that thing right now, right?
Yep.
So like remain in Christ and remain in the Spirit that it'll guide you, right? But don't go around the thing. Now say that thing, because if that thing is ugly, you can't make it prettier. Just say it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, maybe one final thought. I think we've talked primarily about the negative side of candor, which usually I think that's more important because that's the harder part. But part of also speaking truthfully and candidly to one another is saying what you also being honest and direct about. Here's what I enjoy about you. Here's what I love about you. Here's what I value about our friendship. Oftentimes, even in the Midwest, similarly, I think we're right. Get the Midwest nice, and that niceness is usually fairly surface level, and what it does is it cuts off the lows in the sense of like there's generally you're going to have less open conflict and yelling, but it also cuts off the highs in the sense that it eliminates some joy and love and affection because you're not being honest and truthful about here's how much I value you, here's how much I enjoy what we have together in this relationship. So I think that's maybe a good final reminder, exhortation for all of us. Like, not only do we need to be candid and truthful and direct about the hard things, but also be candid and truthful and direct about the good things and say, dude, I so appreciate the fact that we get to hang out regularly. Or I so appreciate the fact that you ask me hard questions and you've loved me through some of the dumb choices I've made over the years, or whatever that might be.
yeah, that's it, friends. Go first. And remember, the whole motive is love.
Yes.
And just love your friends, build them up, and point them more to Jesus and to the cross.
Amen.
Yeah. So if this podcast was helpful to you, please hit that subscribe button, follow us, leave a review, leave a comment. We'd love to keep reaching those who are alone. So we would love your help to help us do that. So we'll see you next week. We love you. Go first. Peace. Hey, friend. Thanks for listening. We're all about equipping you to pursue real friendships. You were not created to be alone because life is just better with real friends. Let's get started.